Hi everyone. Thanks for joining us in this She Knows Tech Masterclass with Dresage on mixing while producing. I am Jasmine. I'm the co-founder of She Knows Tech, and I will be moderating this session today. So excited to collaborate with Keeley, since we've been talking for a couple months now. And we're really excited to have INOCON to host and stream this session. So She Knows Tech is a collective with the goal to close gender gap in the music tech industry through empowering female identifying artists to learn tech and also to highlight female role models, badass women in the industry. We have been producing free virtual master classes, tech training programs, and interview series on our Instagram account where we have conversations with women to share the experience of being in the music tech industry. Anyway, so a little bit more about Keeley. Keeley is a multifaceted artist, producer, songwriter, and composer who goes by the artist name Dresage. Keeley graduated from Berklee's MPNE and has since been building an extensive resume and portfolio. I probably won't be able to mention all of her achievements right now, but just to name a few, as a solo artist, Dresage has released an EP with another one coming up soon this year. And as a writer, she has also collaborated with Illenium, Jai Wolf, and more. Her hit single with Jai Wolf, Better Apart, has gathered almost 5 million plays on Spotify. She has also co-scored for the original Hulu Blumhouse film, My Valentine, that was released earlier this year in February. So when we first got connected to Keeley, right, we immediately proposed a collaboration in putting a masterclass together. And after several discussions with the She Knows Tech team, we pitched this mixing while producing the idea to Keeley, and she was immediately on board. We are particularly excited for this masterclass because the traditional approach of treating production and mixing as two completely separate processes is no longer practical, especially when today's production standard also includes a lot more sound designing using creative effects. Mixing is already playing a bigger role in the process of producing. So in this session, Keeley will be sharing on how mixing while producing allows her to have more control on her projects and a songwriter, composer, and a producer. So with that being said, Keeley, please take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Jasmine. Hello, everybody. Nice to gather here in this space with you. It is early morning in Los Angeles, so I may be coffeeing and maybe a little bit of water, but it's going to be great. So I just wanted to kind of do a little bit of like a debrief intro of sort of who I am, which ironically is the name of the song also that I'm going to show you today, which is, I just realized. So I'm from Washington State. I grew up very close to the Canadian border. I grew up doing a lot of different things, and sort of as it came time to choose what I was going to do with my life, I really started to fall in love with music and singing. And really, I actually went to Berklee thinking I was going to be a jazz singer. So I went to Berklee in Boston, and I got there, and instead of, I don't know, like the first 2 semesters, I kind of found myself staying in to make demos in GarageBand instead of going out to party with my friends. And so I felt like, all right, this is something like I really like having this palette of tools at my disposal as I'm like a storyteller, a songwriter. And I applied for the MPNE department, which is music production engineering. And it is it still is, but when I was there, it's a very heavily male dominated major and field. And so there was a lot of intimidation, I think, for most women who wanted to learn any kind of technical skill. But even then I was like, I don't want to be just like an engineer or a runner in a studio. Like I want to be an artist that has the autonomy to use all these tools and, be able to make my palette and my sound. And I can always work with other people, but I felt that it was a really empowering thing to be able to have this knowledge and this ability at the base of what I do, and then be able to expand and collaborate with people. So I majored in that in school. I moved to LA, and I've been here almost 10 years now. I always say that because I'm a singer, my big saving grace was having a home studio. So having a setup, and I see Liz Hill in here. She's a friend of mine who I helped also get her like home recording setup, and now she's killing it. And I think that this is a really important thing for singers and women, especially, who maybe have felt a little disenfranchised from technology and engineering and producing, to to have this ability to like work from home. And so anyway, so I the first few years of LA, I worked crappy jobs, all the things, but I always had a home studio, and I was lucky to be able to kind of connect with composers who would hire me to sing on commercials, movie trailers, TV shows. And so that kind of just kept building. And the more I got my confidence and sort of broke down the gender barrier stuff that I was dealing with within myself, stepping into music production for my own artistic project, the more I started getting offers to produce a whole track myself instead of just being hired as the singer or the top line writer. So kind of just like seeing those opportunities come and realizing that I am super capable of doing it has been really empowering for me. It's sort of laid this track of my career that I do feel like I can be kind of a one woman show, and that applies like in my live setting, but also especially in making records and doing any kind of film and TV ad work. And so I really value this ability to have this knowledge and, you know, this studio that I've spent 10 years building, fun synths and pedals and my upright piano I'm very proud of. It's very empowering to have this in my home and be able to do this. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess that's kind of where I came into this, where I really started to realize that producing, because now we're all producing in, I mean, I went to school and it was like we were learning on analog consoles at Berkeley, which is a total luxury, but it's not really life right now, especially with studios all closed down because of COVID. So we're all producing and recording in our DAWs. I switched from Pro Tools to Ableton a couple years ago because I felt like my production, like how Jasmine was saying, production and mixing are so intertwined right now with the way that we make music when you're doing anything that's not like, you know, a super acoustic record or something like that. And so I felt that Ableton, because of its ability with super fast MIDI integration, automation, I felt that it was a way for me to produce and feel a little more creative, because now I actually write in Ableton too most of the time. So having all these tools and all of these abilities to change settings and automate things on and off, it just felt a lot more empowering to me than Pro Tools did, because Pro Tools is sort of, I don't know, it emulates a tape machine. So my experience with Pro Tools, even at Berkeley, was really just getting it out of the console into Pro Tools, and it was like digital, but a lot of stuff was done already by the time it went into Pro Tools. So I have a lot of fun in Ableton now because there's just like so much sculpting and molding that can be done. So I don't know if my Ableton needs to be spotlit or anything, but I'm just going to go for it. I'm sure Jasmine will figure it out. Okay. So yeah, so this is a song that is the first song off of my new EP that I've made. And this is the first EP that I've completely produced myself. My first EP that I put out as Dresage was all co-productions. I think there's one song that I produced completely myself, but it would be collaborating with, in this case, all men who are wonderful friends of mine and super talented. But it was continuing to play this kind of dynamic of me coming in, working in somebody else's studio, knowing how to use Pro Tools, Ableton, whatever they're working in, but not having the confidence to really like take it in myself. So I would end up working with somebody in their setting, kind of feeling like I'm the singer in the room, when really I know that I'm doing a lot more, and I have a lot more ideas that really pertain to production as well. And so I would then start to feel like, while I'm really proud of the stuff that we made, and I think that collaboration is wonderful, there was a bit of control that I was giving up. And it also had to do with me not fully believing in myself and believing in the ability of like me taking something from start to finish. So now on this EP, I have made the complete effort to do it all myself. And it's been really, really hard, but it's been really rewarding, because now I know that I can do it, and I know the process that works better for me, so I can bring people in. But I think for my process, having it all start within my computer, and really like the seedling of the whole idea of just be at the core with me is really important to me as an artist, as for my sound. So I just want to play this song from the top down so you guys can hear it before I get into kind of the nitty-gritty of it. So just for some context, this is the final session that I printed stems. So I ended up having my friend Jay Markovitz mix this. And so by mixing this version of mixing, really it's just like compression, EQ, volume, kind of like the last final shine that I just don't have the ability to do after working on it for a year and being too close to it. So all of my effects, all of my creative mixing and production, which are super intertwined, are all already printed by the time I give it to him. So this is my session before I printed stems for him. Pretty much everything is creatively mixed. The one thing that I like to do, because we did record a live kit, I like to give him sort of more, like a little bit less committed style and effects on the kit, because I know he's going to mix it on his end, but everything else is pretty much like the vibe I want it. So this is called Who I Am. This is going to be the first single coming off of my EP, which will come out soon. There's a lot going on in this song. I had a really fun time with this. I kind of just like, I buckled down and made this. I wrote this in like a week straight, just every day. I had these ideas in my head. I had these like this weird verse vocal chop rhythm, mostly that built the song. A lot of times when I'm producing, I kind of just go like, I had to really, actually, maybe this is applicable for you guys, but as wonderful as Berkeley is, I kind of had to unlearn a lot of the like old school, this is the only way a signal chain can be, and this is the only way that you can sculpt with a, XYZ kind of whatever it is. And I think Ableton really allowed me to just pull stuff and make it sound however crazy I wanted, and really trust my ear instead of trust my training, because I know that my training is going to kick in when it needs to. But I think that music can be so creative these days, and I think that like the way to make really innovative different stuff is actually to break a lot of rules. So that's something kind of that I like to do. There's these vocal racks. Something I love in Ableton is that you can have a drum rack and you can pull audio samples in. So is a project before it was printed and sent to Mix Engineer? Yes, but it was all sorry. So there's a question in the chat. Yeah, so the question is, was it printed before I sent it to the Mix Engineer? So yeah, all of my effects, all of my EQ and compression that's been done so far, basically except for the drums. I gave my Mix Engineer the drums pretty much dry. But I mean, as you'll hear, like this isn't an unmixed song. This could be released. I could finish the mix myself, but for this specific song, I printed all of this and then gave it to my engineer with all the effects committed. So I just want to kind of talk about how my live kit, again, I kind of didn't really like the sound of the kick and the snare much where I had it. So I was really just using the overheads and these crunchy mics that I had. And I knew that I was going to give these to my mixer, who specifically is really good at mixing drums. So I kind of left I got it to a certain vibe, but I kind of left things a bit. We always do a lot of like fun, super crunched, distorted tracks and mics in the drum room to mix in. And then so it can be really challenging to make a hybrid live kit and electronic kit work. That's really what my music, and especially this EP, does a lot. So a lot of times when I'm writing it, I will have like sort of my electronic kit already programmed out, and then I'm having my drummer track on top of that. This song, especially in the chorus, uses a lot of sidechaining pumping. So let's talk about this synth, because it's kind of my pride and joy. This is my Prophet Rev 2. It's so weird, but this is kind of what the chorus is really based around, is this and it's got a lot going on. So we've got a big verb, we've got an echo boy, and this is like a rule that I have broken. So instead of putting all of my like dry EQ compression distortion, decapitator stuff before my reverb or echo. I put it after because I wanted the distortion to happen I wanted it to be like really spatial with verb and delay. And then I wanted those effects to be followed by something that's distorting them. So that's what's giving it this kind of like crunchy, I don't know, like marshmallow sound. Not the artist marshmallow, like the food marshmallow. A lot of times, I love this UA API guy. A lot of times I'm cleaning up the low end of things, especially with synths. You kind of need to watch a lot of, like, that synth especially has a lot of low end content. So you kind of need to watch what you're allowing to build up frequency wise, because you need to make sure you're keeping room for the kick, for the bass, for anything else that needs to live down there. This synth is obviously in the chorus, but it's not needing to be anything low. So cutting out lows, I do a lot of that, especially in vocals. Let's see what this EQ is doing. More low cutting, dipping this 450 to 900 range. Probably was feeling a little high mid ickiness, mid. Let's see. This is another synth that I really love. It's called the Bendy Prophet. So this is happening in my bridge, where the bridge is like a total departure from the song, which is sort of like my favorite thing to do, but also I'm realizing maybe I do it a little too much. So I'm reining on the next EP, but this one, this is a fun departure because it comes into this totally different vibe. So let's talk about what's going on. So I think there's a lot of onboard, either I printed this already, or there was some onboard effects on the Prophet. Thanks, Tina. So there's some verb happening on this. I just like had so much fun designing this synth because I love bendy things. I like love bendy things. I'm doing some EQing on it, probably taking out lows. Yep. There's also, I have the extreme pleasure of having one of my best friends be a harp player who's incredible. So I put her all over this song, all over this EP. And check out the harp a little bit. She's really great. She has an electroacoustic harp. So she has like a whole pedal chain of awesome pedals that she will run her harp through. So I am getting a clean, dry harp from a mic from her. And then I'm also getting the output of her pedal board. And so I'm choosing when to mix those things in. You can see that sometimes there's just one. Here are the pedals, right? So this harp should have a ton of stuff happening as far as like delay tails and reverb tails and stuff, but I will automate it to all turn off so that there's space for the next thing happening. You can see this is volume automation here in the gray right here. So on this harp, there's a lot going on. There's an RC20, which is giving it some noise, a little bit of distortion. This is by XLN Audio. They make great stuff. I'm, again, always just like cutting out lows for things that don't need them. I'm automating on an echo after this Echo Boy. In addition, there's also a shimmer verb. It's got a 64th note. So it's kind of like a really, really short slap back. Feedback's up. Woo! What is that? That is a great question. Do I always use reverb delay effects on the tracks itself or using sends? When I was in Pro Tools, I was always using sends, and that was something that kind of made a lot of things feel very clunky because I would be, out of my own laziness probably, I would be stuck with the same effects that I had created on a bus, right? And so with Ableton, I think that it could be potentially time to start using more buses and sends for my effects, but I kind of just went buck wild with this and was like, reverb, delay, blah, on every track. And luckily I upgraded my computer and it can handle that. So a lot of times also when I'm printing for a mixer who's going to come in after with all of my like committed effects, I will make an instrument or an effects rack with an Ableton, which basically allows you to create your own kind of like microbus within that track. So I can have a completely dry signal and then I can have the wet signal. And I can print both of those for him. So he has access to like be able to, you know, EQ and compress both of those separately instead of committed if there are things that need to be addressed. Yeah. Okay. So here's an example. Here's the effects rack that I have going on. I have a dry thing and then I have the delay. This delay turns on. I don't even know what, guys. This was just me working with my friend Sean, who's amazing at guitar, and us just like finding the weirdest sounds we can find. That's something I love doing. This is just like a very nice clean guitar. He's probably coming in already with some verb from a pedal. This is crazy guitar. This has an octave pedal on it, I think, coming in. Yeah. So I'm doing some EQing, getting out some lows, some compressing, and this is also sidechained. So before I like get lost in other stuff, I want to go to vocals because I know a lot of people are curious about vocals. Let's see. Yeah, I think we can go there. Okay, cool. So as a singer, as a songwriter, vocals and vocal production are like the main things that really excite me. A lot of times I will have in Ableton, I love that you can group things. So like these are all my vocals, you can see, aside from the intro group stuff that's happening, but these are all vocals. You can see that I can group my leads and I can deal with them and affect them separately. Doing some EQ, some compression, some decapitating, more EQ, more compression. Got a delay happening. Really nice verb. And this is a chorus stack. A lot of times I'll do a lead in the middle, and then I'll do a left and right double, triple of a lead, like any lead vocal that needs more weight. So these are those. So this is just the delay send. This is an example of that where I can create just the wet side and then I can do my dry, which is really helpful. And then let's go on to verse 2. Or actually, I want to show you something in chorus 2. I kind of created my own vocoder vibe, differently than just like putting on vocal synth by Isotope or something like that. But I on each of these tracks, there's 4. I put on a little Ultra Boy, put it to robot, and then I chose the pitch. So I built my own chord this way of these, I guess, kind of like vocoder, not vocoder thing is the big side chain of this big reverb, right? So you hear it pumping and it creates this like tail that's just creating this, I don't know, this environment that feels heavenly, but it also feels not superhuman. RC20 is really fun because you can create what they call wobble, and that's basically emulating like a tape machine or like a tape delay that you can kind of get wow and flutter vibes from. So anyways, this is my point, right? And I say this in other production videos I've made, but the way to make your song really have a lot of just multifaceted depth is to play with effects coming on and off. And I use a lot of that choice by the lyrics. So like this right here, the lyric is, "Are we all simulation, an anxious nation?" So anxious nation is a very anxiety inducing state, right? So I can create this movement in the pitch of the wobble to kind of get that lyric across. Okay, yeah, Jasmine, let's do some questions.
All right, let's do this. So we do have quite
I feel
a
like
few
I just
questions.
went deep into the underground of
No, I wish this session would
deepest
never
depths.
end so we can just like dive in it. Anyway, so the first question by Matt Merlin. Keeley, how do you describe your musical palette? And when you work on a song, you use colors, pictures, stories?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. I would say that I love blending human and non-human things and textures. I always say texture, like that's a word for me. Big buzzword. And a lot of it is like adding modulation to sounds. So it's like messing with the pitch. It's adding a flanger or a chorus or something that's making the pitch feel a little wider. And then I also, like you see, like there's a live drum kit, and then there's also electronic kits. There's live vocals, and then there's also like vocoded kind of, non-human sounding stuff. So a lot of it is the texture of real and synthetic, I guess you could say.
Okay. And when scoring, so this is by Zach Lightman. When scoring, what's your writing method and how does it differentiate from writing your own music?
Scoring, if I have the luxury of having picture that I'm working to, it's kind of the same thing. And this maybe links into the last question. I when I'm writing, I see a lot of visual, I see color, I see a lot of like, I don't know, like textured fabric, if that's weird. Like I can be like, oh, this sounds velvety. This sounds lace-like to me. Like this is a weird like metallic texture or material or something like that. So I think that while scoring, kind of at first I was like, I don't know if I'm a film scorer or a composer, because like I always have a vocal that I'm working around, or a story that I'm telling. And so it's actually been a really fun exercise for me to have a picture that I'm working to, that I can instrumentally or non-lyrically, at least if I'm doing any kind of vocals in the score, um, tell the story through sound and texture. And I think that's been a really fun new thing that I've discovered about what I'm capable of and what I want to do more of, because, you know, working to picture, even if it's like an ad, I mean, like that's a little less artistic feeling than like working on some beautiful indie drama, but you always have characters to connect to. You always have a narrative, even if there's no words, it's always being told through a lens. So it kind of feels very similar to me. But a lot of times when I am feeling stuck, I actually will write songs to silent pictures, like old black and white film. I found like weird Alice in Wonderland 1920s footage from like, you know, really shaky film cameras. Um, I think it only just is another extension of how I work already.
All right. And then I think we have actually a multifold question by Yash.
Sure.
So, hi, Keeley. My name is Yash, and I'm from India. I'm a huge fan of your work.
Hey.
I wanted to ask you how you got into future bass slash dance music. What were some of your first experiences working in that space? And what does your usual vocal chain look like? I think we have another
Yeah.
question from Kiana also on vocal presets, EQ, comp, FX, and also microphone.
Cool, great. You guys are awesome. There's so many great questions. So in the electronic world, I sort of started doing a lot of top lining. And actually, I'm grateful for my time doing that, because it really taught me. And top lining, if people aren't familiar, is when you get a track. A lot of times in like EDM, electronic music, the producer, the DJ will make this track, and then they'll be looking for a vocal feature. And so usually you get an instrumental that typically has like a song form ish, or like electronic song form. Um, and then they find a vocalist to sing, write melodies and lyrics. And so I was collaborating with some folks for a while doing that, and just did a ton, you know, and it really sharpened my skills as a writer, to have this formula of like, all right, there's this much time before the drop, and like there's this much time in a verse, and like what are you going to do during the drop, or is it a non-vocal drop? So um I think that that's kind of how I got into it, as like a kind of a hired top line singer writer, because I, again, like I had these skills of having a home studio. I can sing, I can write, and I can record myself. And so a lot of it started from that aspect, where it was like initially I was working with composers who would hire me for those things, and then it kind of turned to like artists who would hire me for those things, because in the EDM realm, a lot of DJs are looking for singers. So that's how I did that. First experiences, man, I actually think my first like dance song that I sang on early was with an artist named Noah Neiman, who's out of Texas, and then also AU5. I did a song with him a long time ago. I don't even know if he remembers me, but it's, yeah, anyways. And then, yeah, so my vocal chain, and again, this, like, I'm sure some of you can attest, studios are this like ever evolving, growing, building office and like toolkit that you create, right? And so as you sell things, make a little more money, make less money, like it all kind of evolves with you. And so I am so grateful that I have, through doing music full time, have like been able to actually grow my tools this way. At first I had bad mics. I had like a DigiDesign before it was even called Avid, Mbox, like just bad, but you can make a lot of stuff work. And I actually always say, I don't know where it is, but an SM7 is like the best mic, $400. It's like the best mic before you go into like a Manly or anything higher, which are higher rates, price range. So my chain right now is this Manly reference cardioid microphone. It has its own power supply, so it's tube mic. I love it because it really fits my voice very well. It's got a lot of brightness without it sounding harsh, and it has presence in my low end, which is really nice because I have a bright voice, so it's nice to feel like there's some warmth and depth to it. It also fits into a mix very easily, which I love. You don't have to do a ton to it. I'm going from my mic pre is a Great River preamp, and I can't remember what it's kind of modeled after, but it's I have a lunchbox, API lunchbox. So it's a 500 series Great River mic pre. And then it's going into a Shadow Hills mono optograph compressor. And that is a new addition to the family, and I love her. Yeah, so that's my vocal chain. And then I have a Apollo 8P interface. That's my vocal chain. Yep.
Sorry, Kiana was asking, can you repeat the name of the mic again? She just
Yeah.
missed it.
I can't write it. Manley Reference Cardioid. MANLEY. And usually, see, I have this great desk. This is an arm coming off of my desk. I have a pop filter that comes down, but for this and for filming reasons, it's up.
Thank you for that. And let's move on. So, a question from McKinley. Do you take off all your reverb and delay before sending it to your mix engineer?
I don't, because I have done the creative side of mixing already, right? So like I don't want him to change any of my reverbs. I don't want him to change any of the sounds, especially because I'm automating so many things. I'm changing the mix on and off. I'm changing like a lot of parameters within a sound. So a lot of times I'm printing those because they're very integral to the production. But like I was saying, I have been doing an effects rack in Ableton, which allows you to have all of those effects on a separate chain, and you can have them at 100% wet so that you can give the mix engineer like a fully wet return, and then you can have the dry vocal. Yeah.
All right. And next by Israel Rodriguez. How do you incorporate analog synth into your production? Or because of the easiness of life, you tend to use VST only?
I think you can get super far with soft synths. I mean, even the wavetable synth in Ableton, I will reach for a lot of times because it's just like fast. And when I don't have the luxury of like sitting down to create a masterpiece or attempt to create a masterpiece, I'm just looking for utility and quickness, especially if I'm just being hired to do like a commercial or a pitch for something. So, but that being said, I do love analog synths. Again, this is something that through years of building and saving, I have had the luxury of collecting. So I have a Prophet Rev 2. I have a Sub 37, which is by Moog, which is like a really great sub bass sound. The Prophet is really versatile. It can do kind of everything. And that's what a lot of these synth sounds, pretty much all of them that you hear on this song are Prophet based. I recently got a Mellotron, which I love. It's fun because it's got, Mellotrons are sampled from real instruments. So it has that blend that I love, right? It's a synthetic and real based, like, choir sample or clarinet or whatever. So I love how much you can do on that synth specifically because you can make it sound not real, but it's all organic samples that it's based off of. And then I have a Minilog, Korg Minilog, which is a great beginner analog synth. Not even beginner, but it's really small, so you can take it and it's really portable and it's very powerful. I think it's about $400 too. I have this guy, Teenage Engineering OP1, which is also very small and fun. Yeah, and then I also have been collecting a bunch of pedals that I run those things into. So I have a couple of Chase Bliss pedals. I have a really fun distortion called the Bad Comrade. I just got an OTO BAM reverb. So a lot of it, when I have the luxury to like really tinker in this station of my stuff, it's really fun, but sometimes I don't have the luxury and I just need to get quick. And so I'll use soft synths, which are great too.
We have another question that's also on VST by Yash.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite instrument VSTs for synth or bass sounds?
Let's look, huh? I like, oh, you know what? I like this tall plugin. It's a Juno emulator. Let's see if I can just pull an instance in. And it's great. It's got so much that actually a lot of songs on my EP use. I love this guy. There's a lot you can do in it. There's a ton of great presets, and then you can also build things. I also love that it has a chorus in it. I really like Sublab is cool. It's this newer bass synth thing, and it's kind of got like there are packs that you can buy for it, so it's kind of got this new, I don't know, it's got that like element of splice, right, where it's like connected to the internet and you can like keep adding things to it. Same thing with a lot of Output's work, and I've actually worked with Output a lot and built plugins with them. I did a lot in Exhale. I built all the vocals of the initial launch of Hooked within Arcade. And so I think that especially for writing Output stuff is great because you can kind of just like hit something and it's a vibe and you can start writing to it. I also really love Serum. Serum's great. All the Arturia stuff is awesome. Yeah, but also like don't sleep on Wavetable. It's great.
Yes, Wavetable is actually super, super versatile.
Yeah. Oh
And
my God, it's so powerful.
I think it's slowly substituting my usage on Serum too. Because
Nice.
Yeah, it saves CPU power, especially it's summer right now. Sometimes, you know, like
Yeah.
my
Computers
CPU
need a little rest.
Yes. So let's go next. Bridget is asking, what are your main genres
Ooh,
of inspiration?
great question. I initially, man, originally I was like Jewel, Sheryl Crow, Fiona Apple, the Cranberries, Paula Cole, like all the 90s, Alanis Morissette. I grew up really close to the Canadian border, so I got a lot of like Canadian female artists of like the mid to late 90s. And then we obviously went into like the wonderful world of pop in the early 2000s. And that gets like all the boy band and girl band stuff like gets a bad rap, but I actually think that's like some of the best production that's ever existed. So it started there. I always really identified and still do really identify with female songwriters and artists. And then I got very into jazz. I studied and adore still Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong, Lena Horne, and then went to Berkeley thinking I was gonna be a jazz singer, and then I was like, nope. And was really in my like Fiona Apple phase. I have a Fiona Apple tattoo. I'm like, I love her. Into that sort of like dark brooding vibe, and I really started writing a lot of songs on piano, and so that's kind of why synths and piano are mostly my use of instruments when I'm writing. I try to use guitar and get better at guitar, but I'm really more of a keys player. And I guess kind of through then it's been like St. Vincent, Bjork, Jenny Lewis. I grew up in the same town that Death Cab for Cutie did, so I have a lot of that like Pacific Northwest love for them. Yeah, artists like I think who are some recent artists that I really identify with. I really love FKA Twigs, but I think like Bjork and St. Vincent are two of my like faves. Andy
Okay,
Schauf,
so
Andy Schauf too.
we have a 5-minute call, so
Yeah.
if we're lucky, we should be able to fit in 1.5 question. But there's this one question that Ugam Kitani asked. I'm really inspired by the way you use samples, effects, and automation in order to make things more interesting. How do you not end up overdoing it? And how do you maintain a balance between intricacy and simplicity?
There are many times that I've overdone it and I have to like walk it back. So a lot of times I will kind of throw everything at the wall, which is maybe a bit of a detriment to my production sometimes, but you can always walk things back. So my philosophy is like do a million things and then mute a million things and really find out what is the core essence of your song. And if a sound isn't completely enthralling you and interesting, like you probably don't need it.
Nice. And okay. So the other one, can you describe the difference between mixing and mastering? How do you use them in your production process?
So
This is by
mastering,
Marco.
hey Marco. Mastering I don't do unless I have to. I mean, like I've kind of said this before, but when you're doing stuff that's like work for hire and you kind of have to do like all the things, right? Like I have to write, compose, produce, mix it. So it's like showable to a client. For example, I will master it myself, which basically just means like adding a bit of the Shadow Hills UA plugin, getting some nice like master bus compression happening, and then putting an L2 on it. So it's a limiter, it gets loud. That's really what people, to have it sound professional when you're like presenting something, it does need to be to like a certain loudness. That's just where we are in music now. But on my record, for example, like I'm sending it to a mastering engineer and she has a whole setup, a whole studio, a whole like very critical, intensive listening environment, which I don't have. So, so yeah, it really depends on like the project of what the scope is. Like if I'm releasing it as a record, it's going to be, you know, I'm like hiring my friend to mix it, which is again separate from like all the production mixing stuff that I've done, but like the final thing that he creates and then gives it to my mastering engineer. But if I'm just doing a song that's for a commercial, I will do all that stuff myself because the budgets usually just aren't, they're not going to give you budget to like hire other people. Just what it is.
Right. I think we can pick a small question for
Yeah.
last one by Joelle. Love the production of this track. How do you know when is enough and when the track is done?
I don't. I kind of just have to be like, all right, when is my sanity really going to break? It's now. Okay, wrap it up. And so that's kind of that's what it's, I mean, also you know when something's done. You know when things stop bothering you. It's kind of like approaching done, right? So even with this, like I'm in, I think with my mixer, we're in like version 6 or 7 at this point, and I'm still hearing things. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna add some little elements that are going to help this chorus hit better. And then I send it to him. And so at some point it has to come out, right? So you kind of just have to make that decision yourself and have confidence to choose when that is.
All right. So I think that kind of concludes our session today. So before we wrap up, just, I think if you didn't get a chance to watch it, if you didn't get a chance to watch it yet, Dresage was recently featured in Andrew Huang's 4 Producer 1 Sample Challenge, and she's got this beautiful track, Holy, that came out of it. And she's also released a similar deep dive tutorial video. So if you want to, get in touch more or just kind of like watch more from Dresage, please feel free to, stalk her on YouTube. And I've dropped our social handle links here. So I just want to thank you all again. Dresage, Keeley, thank you so much for your time. This was such a great session, such a great song too. So can't wait to play it as soon as it's out.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you guys for all your great questions. This was great.
All right, so we'll see you guys at the next session.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.